A deep drive to left field. Back and gone! A walk-off grand slam for Brian Dozier.
Now that's the way to end a ball game. It's a walk-off grand slam! The Twins win it! Twins win! The Twins win it! 11-7 to walk it off to the All-Star break. An intense day, a dramatic end, and a great celebration for the guys in red around home plate. Dozier now with 6 walk-off hits.
Hey guys, I'm Brian Dozier and you're listening to The Walk-Off.
Welcome, Walk-Off fans. This is our first Sunday episode. Or actually, we did have a Sunday episode, but it was one of our longer episodes. This is our first Sunday special. I like that. On the spot. That was great.
Yes.
I'm of course joined by the amazing Anthony Walsh. Anthony, how are we doing today?
I'm, disgusted with my Mets as usual, but that's normal, so that's okay.
I went to the Mets game. It was a bloodbath for the Phillies, or not for the Phillies, for the Mets. So both teams, and then they lose to the Nationals. Listen, both of our teams are not doing too hot right now.
That's true. Very true.
But today we are talking about the Arizona Diamondbacks. Which team are we talking about? I got their hat. We are talking about the Arizona Diamondbacks. There is a lot to talk about this young team. I'm going to wear the hat the entire time because my hair is crazy. But let's just get right into it, as we always do. 35-24 through their first 59 games. I knew this team was going to be good. I didn't know how good, and I really couldn't have told you that they were going to be competing for a first place spot at this time right now.
It's insane. Like, the fact that they're tied with the Dodgers right now, like, they should feel very proud. I know it's early June and everything, but, like, the Dodgers have been a top-tier team for a long time now, and the Diamondbacks have been a low-tier team for a long time now. And, the fact that they're not, in, like, 4th place right now or 3rd place, 10 games under 500 like they normally are. The fact that they're actually playing well, they're seeing some of these rookies that they've been waiting on coming up and doing well. I'm happy for the fans. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to go deep in the playoffs or anything, but it's a step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, it's awesome. And they were on a 6-game winning streak until yesterday when they versed the Braves, but they won the first. They're on a 2-game losing streak now. Today was a rough game, but forget about today. I mean, this team, just like you said, filled with a lot of young bucks, like coming in hot. Corbin Carroll's number 1 on that list. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but like how this team has had a lot of success so far in, a short amount of time. There's still over 100 games to play, but they're extending Torey Lovullo, who's one of those managers that has been there the entire time. In 2017 to 2019, he led the Diamondbacks to a playoff each of those 3 years. After that, he couldn't hit the 300 mark, or the 500 mark. Sorry. And he's still there. He just got extended through 2024. I think this is good management by the Diamondbacks on their manager. Because, Anthony, I mean, we could talk about it all day. There's managers left and right that come in one day, and they might, win 100 games. But the next day, we were talking about it when we were talking about the Mets. Should Showalter be fired? It's just like that. The Diamondbacks are on that kind of team, especially for a team that was rebuilding for 3 years, and they didn't fire their manager once.
He's been a part of this team for, like you said, a long time now. He's had losing seasons, but they've stuck to their guns. They said, you know what, this is our guy. And I respect that. I mean, even if at points, I'm sure the fans were calling for his name and saying, well, look, this team's got to do better, because everybody wants instant results now. We live in an instant world. But the Diamondbacks have stayed true and said, you know what, we believe in this guy. We're either going to go down with him or we're going to rise with him. And right now, it's looking like they're rising. I mean, it's early, and, obviously a lot could happen. But one thing's for sure, the draft picks that this organization's made have worked so far, at least. Because you see a lot of young guys, some names that we haven't really heard of very much, come all of a sudden and play well. And that's how his team starts doing well. We saw with the Astros, we saw with the Dodgers. That's how winning teams win, is through draft picks, good draft picks. And so they're certainly laying the foundation, but Torey Lovullo has been a big part of that. And he doesn't really get the credit he deserves. He's not a big managerial name, but he should be a big managerial name because he stuck with this team through some of the worst times, and now they're rising. So I mean, deserves a lot of credit because so many managers move nowadays. Girardi, Buck Showalter, come back in the league with a totally different team. You never really see a guy stay for one spot for a while, so it's cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. And you're right, he's not one of the guys that we hear talked about a lot. I hear Dave Roberts a lot, of managers that have been around for a long time. Terry Francona, who's obviously been around for a lot longer than a lot of these guys, but even Dusty Baker, but you never hear Torey Lovullo. Like, even when I was looking at the stats, I was like, I never even remembered Torey Lovullo being fired like that. I just didn't see that happening. But
yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm looking it up now, since 2016, well, the offseason 2016 going into 2017. That's a long time now. I mean, and they've had a lot of, if you think about it, think about the last time the Diamondbacks were really relevant or really, in the playoffs. It's been a very long time. And so, I mean, how many other managers can you say have been with a team for, how long is 2017? Like 7 years now? How many managers have been with a team 7 years, don't have much success, stay, and they're not really on the hot seat? Like, I really can't think of one of them. Within 2 or 3 years, if you're not at least in the playoffs, you're not tons of winning records and everything, usually you're gone. And usually you have got fans calling for your head. So it's rare. I mean, it speaks a lot about the respect people have for Torey Lovullo, the fact that he's, just been there and hasn't really been never been really on a hot seat. So I mean, respect to him. He's got a team that's full, like we said, full of young guys. Got some veterans in there too. But I mean, a team that was even last year pretty bad. Now they're bringing them to being tied with the Dodgers. You got to give credit to the manager. We always knock the managers, but you got to give credit where credit is due also.
Absolutely. And I'm looking at it right now. They actually didn't go to the playoffs in 2018 and 2019. Mm-hmm. But they did have an over 500 record. But I think that makes it even more incredible that he's still on this team, and he never took this team past the divisional series. They never had a division win. They went to the wild card in 2017, beat the Rockies, and then went to the division series, got swept by the Dodgers.
So that was the last time they were in
2017. Wow. And I don't know. There's a lot to dissect here. So, I mean, where is this coming from? Obviously, the manager is a great piece. You love that, but it's also from the players. Of course, you can't be a team without the players. And from what I'm seeing, there are insane amount of stars on this team. Ketel Marte, who I know is decreasing in value a little bit, but is still, has 4 triples already. 4 triples, 9 home runs, is batting .274 with a .336 on base and a .479 slugging percentage. For a guy who's 29 right now, I mean, listen, he's a different player than he was 2 years ago. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but he definitely is. He was one of those big stars on these lower class teams. I think he's still a star, but I don't think he's as big as the next 2 players in front of him.
I would agree with you. I mean, when the one player I would always think of, when it comes to the Diamondbacks, even in their lower years, was him. I mean, that was really their only star for a while. I mean, think back of all-star teams. Who was the guy that kind of Major League Baseball just immediately was like, oh, here's your all-star, or the fans, I should say, since they get voted in.
Yeah.
It was him. And you really didn't see anybody else. They haven't had any other stars prior to these young kids getting called up. I mean, you look at this team now, who's playing well? The young kids. Sure, there's some veterans and they're doing well also, but it's mainly the young kids. And so it again speaks to the good drafting in this organization. But still, he's a very good player, and maybe not as good as he once was in his prime, but still contributes, and I'm sure is a really good veteran presence in that clubhouse for all these young guys.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see this team, and one of those veterans that we're talking about, who I got to be honest with you, I did not know was this old before I looked it up. Christian Walker is 32 years old. Mm-hmm. I thought he was a lot younger, but that's just me, I guess. I didn't hear about him for a while. Last year had this is the last 15 games. Last year he had 36 home runs, batted .242, 327 on base, 477 slugging percentage, was really the big guy of this team, but also had 131 strikeouts. He still has more strikeouts, but he's hitting better. He's getting on base a little bit less, but he's hitting more extra base hits. I don't know if that might be a little bit of the rule changes. The shift always helped a lot of people. But he is thriving right now on a team that I really thought he was going to be, a trade piece on.
And also 12 homers leads the team right now. That's
exactly.
To be doing that as, he's not like he's 23, 24 years old in his prime right now. Not to say he's really old or anything, but to be doing that as one of the older guys on the team when you have a team full of 23-year-olds, it's pretty impressive. So, like we said multiple times about good teams, they got to have a mix of some veterans. They got to have some mix of some young guys. And I see that in this team. Not to say a lot of these veterans, if we go into the pitching, aren't necessarily at the top of their game anymore. But we've seen Christian Walker, we've seen Ketel Marte. Those are two veteran players that are still performing, still doing their job. And from what we could see, are helping these young guys. So, they have the recipe for, I'd say a wild card team, not a division winner, not with the Dodgers. But the fact that they could even be a wild card team is a testament to how well this organization is being run right now. Because they were in the dumps, man. Last year, past few years, like we said, hasn't made playoffs at all since 2017. So, just a lot being done right, and so they should be praised for it.
Yeah. And you want to know what? We've seen teams that are built with a lot of veterans. I don't want to name any names, but the Cubs are one of those teams. They got Eric Hosmer and Trey Mancini this offseason. So they have a lot of older pieces on that team, not to even mention the pitching staff. But you need young guys on your team. And if there's any team with young guys, it is the Orioles and it is the Diamondbacks. They are the baby backs. The Corbin Carroll, Geraldo Parra, Gabriel Moreno, who they got in a trade, even Alec Thomas. These are just some young, great players, great rookies that are just not all rookies, but just great, really young players that have been insane.
We've seen so many rookies come up this year. It's going to be a really interesting Rookie of the Year vote. Obviously we still have, when it comes to rookies, you don't know. Guys could get on slumps, get sent down. Things could change very quickly. So it's a very raw idea right now in early June. But we could sit here and name so many candidates from so many teams in both the AL and NL, and guys that are 21, 22, 23 years old, playing like they've been in the league for 10 years. So it's crazy. The future of baseball is definitely bright. And if everything goes right, the Diamondbacks are going to be right there in that future of baseball. Obviously, they're hoping to be like an Astros type team. Everybody remembers how bad the Astros were in the late 2000s, early 2010s. Then slowly, young guys came up, ended up being now seemingly might turn into a dynasty. That's the best case scenario. But still, even if they don't reach that heights, but even just get, say, one World Series or something like that, if you come from the dumps like that and to come all the way up with a small payroll, it's honestly inspiring because so many teams now, we see the Mets, we see the Dodgers have gigantic payrolls, and sometimes the smaller teams, we say, well, they don't have much of a shot, but that's not true. Good drafting, you can come out of it, and you can just be just as much of a contender as the other teams.
Yeah, absolutely. They have played small ball, something that you don't see a lot in baseball anymore, and I don't know. I put this team on and I love to watch them. And another part of the reason, you brought it up, the pitching isn't as good as hitting. The pitching, I believe, is about the 19th best in the league, while their hitting is about the 5th best. Something around those stats. But when you look at that pitching, you do see Zach Gallen. Zach Gallen has been insane. And, I don't want to say anything, but Sandy Alcantara, who won the Cy Young last year, has not lived up to that Cy Young standards. And Zach Gallen was in the conversation for Cy Young and has continued to live to that standard of Cy Young greatness. He is, in his last 12 appearances at home, 10-1, 0.68 ERA, and 0.68 walks, hits in innings pitched, a whip. He is the first pitcher to have 10 plus wins, an ERA and WHIP both under the .7 in 12 starts at home since Walter Johnson back in 1917. So to put that in perspective, the Diamondbacks weren't even a team back then, let alone like 3/4 of the team in baseball right now. There's been so many great pitchers since then. Pedro Martinez, Randy Johnson for the Diamondbacks. Like, no one is going like this right now. Now, Anthony, I don't know how you feel about Zach Allen, but I'm a huge fan of what he can do.
Yeah, I think Cy Young might be a little bit premature to say. I'd have to see him. If this is, say, like we're in late July and he's still doing this, I'd say, okay, I could start having that conversation. But since Zach Allen's not to say Zach Allen has a bad career. He's had a very solid career and everything. But Cy Young worthy is on a totally different level. I mean, we could both agree on that. To be Cy Young, you can't just be good. You can't just be very good. You have to be great. So,
all right, that's fair.
I mean, that's not to say that he can't be great and have a very. I mean, I'll say a surprising season. I don't think anybody was coming into the season saying Zach Allen's going to win the Cy Young. But if he gives up this pace, sure. I mean, there's no reason why he can't. I don't see it necessarily happening. I think he's going to be good for them. I think he's going to be their ace. But Cy Young worthy, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just a hater, but I just don't see it happening necessarily. I think he's going to be a very important piece for this team. I think he's been like one of those guys on his team for a while now that you could say has just been a good player. But Cy Young worthy to me just seems it's a step too far, I'd say.
Okay. He was actually my pick for the Cy Young this year. Him and Dylan Cease. And Dylan Cease is not.
Oh, you did that? Okay. Well,
yeah, I think that's who I picked. I would have to look back, but I think that's who I picked. But I mean, you're right. He's only thrown 78 innings so far. So not a lot to prove. Or not a lot to see right now on the boards. But he only had 12 starts back in 2020. Posted a 2.75 ERA in 72 innings. Right now, he's had 13 starts in 78 innings and has posted a 2.75 ERA. To go along with that, he's only allowed 2 more runs than he did back in 2020. Now, 2020 was a totally different season. I mean, the rule changes are a big thing, but also like COVID, that's huge. So you can't really take all this into account, but just some interesting numbers to look back on,
That's true. I mean, it's crazy. It sort of tells you how short that 2020 season is that he already has more innings pitched. I mean, that really puts into like perspective. I mean, we kind of forget we talk about how short it is, but that season was short. I mean, it doesn't mean. I mean, the numbers still stand and everything, but it just you got to take it into account. It's different and everything. But
the crazy thing is, we're about 59, 60 games throughout the season right now. Like 4 days would be the postseason.
I mean, that tells you how.
A little off track, but like just to remind you how short that season was.
Right, and I mean, no, I would say it's on track because I mean, 2020 is only 3 years ago. So when you look at guys' stats, you're gonna look at 2020 is going to be one of the first years you look at because it's in the past couple of years. I mean, but yeah, I mean, that's not the Zach. Look, Zach Allen's had a pretty long career now. He's done well. I mean, there's people who should put respect on his name, but I forgot that you said Zach Allen would be a Cy Young. I mean, that's crazy that you said that because I mean he does have a real shot. I still don't see it.
All right.
But if it does end up happening, I give you major props because that's a really good prediction. Because not many people were saying that.
No, I don't know. There's just something about him. I've always liked him. Last year he had a 2.54 ERA. So I mean, through 31 starts. Still have to see. But another guy that I want to talk about who is actually in the award conversation already, and I know you said it's always up in the air because slumps happen, then you get sent down to AAA. Corbin Carroll. I mean, he has been Anthony. I don't know if you can agree with me here, but I think he's been the best rookie so far this year.
I would say he's definitely been the most consistently good one.
Okay.
I don't know if he's the most talented necessarily. I mean, look, to win the Rookie of the Year award, all you got to do is have the best rookie year. You don't got to be the most talented because, there's talented guys that aren't consistent for the year, and then the next year they're consistent. With rookies, it's very difficult. But right now, he's been consistently good. He's been, to me, the guy that looks like he belongs the most. I've looked at the other rookies, and while they show flashes, they get back into slumps. They get back into like kind of having boneheaded moments where you're like, oh yeah, they're still only 22 years old. But with him, you really haven't seen that very much. It's just been he's kind of came into Major League Baseball and it's kind of fit like a glove for him. It's been immediately success. And he's done it on a team where while they played well, you can't say there's so much around him in the lineup where he's protected by so many great players. No, he's in a solid lineup, but he's doing it himself. He's not like he's not playing for the Dodgers. He's not playing. He's playing for a team where he has equal talent around him, and he's getting pitches to hit, and he's doing his job. So I think he's definitely going to start earning the respect of these pitchers. You might see him get a lot more walks. You might see him get pitched around, but yeah, I agree with you right now. He's definitely got the biggest shot because he's been consistent.
He's great. Like, he can hit the ball really anywhere. He has about 200 at bats. He's on like the cusp of the 200 at bat mark right now, and has 104 total bases, along with 15 doubles, a triple, and 10 home runs. So, first of all, when someone tells me that, he also, not to mention he has 16 stolen bases, which actually, surprisingly enough, doesn't lead the team. Here, wait, let me get. What? Oh, sorry. It doesn't. Oh no, it does lead the team. I'm sorry. It doesn't lead the league, but it also doesn't lead rookies. That's what I was thinking. Asturi Ruiz has like 24 by now, which is crazy. But he has 16. So, I mean, he is fast. I've heard he has a little bit of pop, and the 10 home runs do speak for that. But I think he's more of like a doubles kind of guy. In my eyes, just like how short he is. I've seen his batting stance. Like, it's not something that I would see like, oh, well, he hit his 30th home run. I think 30 would be his max, but he is a fast guy. He can play the outfield well. I think he brings a lot of talent to the league that they want to see. And in the early season comparisons, they compared him to Bryce Harper, which I think is a little premature to talk about, but they compared him Bryce Harper, but they said his power is his speed. The Bryce Harper's power is Corbin Carroll's speed. So if they're talking that highly about his speed and he's showing it right here, that's great. I love fast guys like that.
Yeah, that comparison, I agree with you, is a little extreme. I think you could make it to another guy that's kind of, because Bryce Harper, while he hits a lot of homers, he's also another get-on-base double type guy, all like in the same breath. He's bold. That's why he's so great, and he gets the money he gets and everything. But I see what they're saying. The swing is kind of like they both have very flawless swings. Like they make it look easy. Like they just go up there and smack a double up, and it just is obviously very difficult. But they make it look easy. So they're similar in that breath. And but Corbin Carroll, the difference is he's a lot faster than Bryce Harper. I think ever really was. And Bryce Harper was pretty fast. But Corbin Carroll, we mentioned his stolen bases. He's got more chances for triples. He's got more chances for doubles, even more so than Bryce Harper, I'd say, because he's younger, faster, and all that. But I see the comparison. I don't know if it's the best. Like, I mean, it's hard to come up with somebody off the spot, but there's got to be a better guy that utilizes his speed a little bit more. Because Harper is not. I mean, he's fine speed wise, but he's not known for that. He's not. He's not a speedster. He's not a stolen base guy, really. And Corbin Carroll's, that's the opposite. He is known for that. So you have to kind of find that comparison. But I see where they're saying with the swing and everything. I get where it's coming from, but it's a little off.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I thought too. I thought it was weird. They made some other weird comparisons. I think they compared they made a comparison like back in Pete Alonso's rookie season from him and Frank Thomas.
No, that's definitely no. That's just because they're two home run hitters. No.
That's exactly what I like. I was like, just because they both have power doesn't mean they're the same play. Like, he's a DH. Like, I see Alonso playing first base all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah. Now, Anthony, I want your final thoughts on this team. Now, we went in depth with some of the different players. Not to even mention, Merrill Kelly, who's 34 years old, has a 2.84 ERA. Gabriel Moreno, another solid rookie, who came over in trade for Dalton Varsho. Lourdes Gurriel has the most hits on the team. These trades this offseason have been huge because Varsho and Gurriel, both two traded guys. Not to mention, this team has been pretty good with trading lately. They traded Zach Gallen from the Cardinals for Sandy Alcantara, I think. No, they traded Marlins. Never mind. Sorry. Cardinals had Sandy Alcantara. Marlins had Zach Gallen. Zach Gallen did a swap. Bingo. Okay. But they've been really good with finding these prospects. You mentioned earlier, drafting is a big thing. I mean, you could talk about how big free agent signings all the time, but the homegrown talent is the real kind of talent that people, I would say, want to see more.
Yeah. And it's also not only what people want to see, it's also just what pays better. Because you get a guy, you're not paying him hundreds of millions of dollars. You have him on a rookie deal. You have him, you have him at their youngest. So that's very hard to do in a signing. Guys don't really get signed at 23, 24 years old. Very, very rarely if they're really good. So yeah, drafting is certainly the best. I mean, look at every team that's been winning. It's a lot of homegrown teams. Yeah, they have some veterans in there that they sign or trades and everything, but it's a lot of guys that they either traded for when they were prospects or drafted. So that's the way to win. I look at, if anything, a lot of the teams that buy players and everything usually fail. So I think that's the best course of action, is trading for young guys and just drafting young guys.
Yeah, that's what I like to see too. But I mean, this is another thing that I think about when I see this team. You think about like big teams like the Padres. Oops, sorry. You think about the Padres. That Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, Juan Soto, Xander Bogaerts, big names. Think about the Dodgers, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts. You think about the Astros, Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, Yordan Alvarez. Like these big names. When I think of the Diamondbacks, there's not that big of names that come up. There's names that are like Corbin Carroll comes up because he's becoming one of those big players, and Zach Gallen comes to mind for the same reason. But there's no players that have like solidified themselves as like huge faces of baseball stars. But they're still winning, and they are so close to the Dodgers.
Yeah, it's I mean, especially when you look at, there are pieces in this lineup that you could see are kind of holdovers from the bad teams. So when I went through, there's some guys that are hitting like 210 or even high 100s, and you're saying, okay, I remember them from the 2021 Diamondbacks, or just to give a team. But so that's I think this is going to be the reason why they start to sink a little bit, because that's only sustainable for so long. But it comes back again. You do have a couple veterans on this team that are still playing well, that we've already mentioned. Also, rookies it's a really good weapon to have, because teams don't know them very well yet. And that's a very, very good thing, because you don't have, scouting reports are very scarce. Even with, the technology we have today, you can only translate minor league scouting to major league scouting so well. It's going to be different, so that's part of it. But the problem with that also is when they see guys more, they start to get more of a scouting report on them and need to get more and more. And then slowly, the numbers start to go down a little bit, unless they're superstars. So that's it. There's two sides to the coin. But I think that's the main reason that they've been playing so well, is that they do have a mix of some veterans and some rookies that are just gelling really well together. But that's also going to be, I think it's a little bit of early success. But yeah, I think that's the main reason. They're not perfect, but they play well enough where they have young guys where the other team doesn't always know the players well yet. So I think that's the main reason.
I like it. Now, I have it at the end of our little script here. But do you think they'll continue this success throughout the season? And if you don't think, or you do think, how long do you think it lasts right now? Or when do you think it's going to fall?
So I will say this. I mean, I kind of alluded to what I just said. I do think that they're going to start to come down a little bit. The question is how much? And also, to me, the question is, what are they doing at the deadline? Because let's say, okay, the deadline's in July now. Let's say they're still not in first place, but they're competing with the Giants and the Padres, and they're still very much in contention for the wild card, which I think is probably what's going to be happening. They're going to sink down a little bit. Either the Giants or the Padres, probably the Padres, are going to rise up, get back into second place and take that spot. What do they do? If they're only, say, 3 or 4 games behind, and that's from that spot, are they going to, I mean, it's very hard to still, and sit there and say, well, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to try, because why not? You haven't been in the playoffs since 2017. You're a few games out of a spot. Take a shot. I'm gonna say that they're gonna make a wild card. I think they're gonna squeak in at the very end of the season. I think they're gonna lose pretty badly in the wild card series just because they're not ready. And I think it's very difficult for a team full of 20-somethings and some positions where there's not much talent to really do well. But I think unless like say Zach Gallen gets injured or Corbin Carroll gets injured, as long as they stay healthy and maybe they do a little something at the deadline, bring in another piece, I think they will get in a wild card spot and probably just lose out. But that's a huge, huge accomplishment because they've come from the depths, as we said. So that's my prediction. I think they're going to squeak a wild card spot out. I think the Padres and the Dodgers probably will finish ahead of them. But I think they're going to squeak in one of those wild card spots for sure.
Awesome. I think they also get to a wild card spot. I don't think they do it the way that you think they're going to do it. I think they stay in contention for that first place spot maybe until September. Wow. I think I see a lot of teams. I saw the Phillies a lot break down in September. So I think they're a team that can make it to September, but kind of drizzle out there, or even late August, kind of start drizzling out, but not enough to, we're under 500. I think they'll win. They'll be over 500. I think they'll go to the wild card. I do think they'll lose. I mean, you don't know who they're versing right now. If some different team got in, you don't know. But I really do like this team. I think they're interesting on a lot of different levels. I think at the deadline they're going to need to get pitching, because right now, I'm sorry, but Andrew Chafin, he's a good pitcher, but he's not like a solidified reliever for me. I want someone better. I don't know who, but I want someone better. I saw some mock trades for Marcus Stroman from the Cubs. I mean, the Cubs don't really have playoff potential right now. Maybe that's a potential trade they want to make. Go out and get some more starting pitching, because I don't think a 34-year-old Merrill Kelly is the best number 2 starter you can have right now. Just like that. Through 12 starts, he has a 2.84 ERA. That's great, but we've seen guys that have are towards the 34-year-old mark, which is the real mark that I think that people start decreasing. At least batters do. I wouldn't say as much pitchers, but I think the 34 mark is really where I start maybe saying this is towards the end of his career. And I think Merrill Kelly's at that point. I mean, we saw him in the WBC. He was great, but that also means he had to play an extra month of baseball. So that could hurt him at the end of the season. It's a long stretch, but I think it's going to happen. He will fall off, and they'll need to get another starting pitcher. Granted, they're going to need to get a starting pitcher either way by the end of, by the start of next season, because 35 is not going to, it's just not one of those things. And even if he does stay as good, can you even name their 3, 4, and 5 guys? It's just up in the air right now. And I think that's what they need. I think pitching is what they need. They're good hitters. They need more hitting. And that's where their wild card dreams end.
Especially when you said the end of their rotation is very, very sketchy. I believe it's let me look. It's Zach Davies. I know is one of them, which he's very it's Ryan Nelson, Zach Davies, and Tommy Henry. That is not a very reliable back end of a rotation. Also, you alluded to the bullpen. The bullpen's ERA is pretty. I think it's over 4. It's in the bottom half of the league, so there's a lot of work to be done there. It's not shocking, because you're in this transition period from being bad to starting to get good, and that's always during that transition period you have holdover players that just aren't that good. You have positions that you haven't had the chance to get any better yet. So I think the back half of the rotation plus the bullpen, certainly examples of that. I think also in the outfield, you see a little bit of that. Jake McCarthy being one of those guys that I think he's hitting 200 if that. So, you can't have that for a playoff team, even a wild card team that squeaks in, even with the extra, more teams in the playoffs now. it's still the playoffs. And you got to, at the very least, your whole lineup has to be hitting like 250 at the very least. If you're not doing that, you're not gonna go very far. So yeah, I think if they're gonna be successful, they need to make moves. The question is, if they do go for a Stroman, or they go for even say like a right fielder or whatever, what are they gonna give up? Because this is a team that still has some talent in the farm system that they hope to bring up, and hope to keep this team young. But to get you got to give. So that's part of the problem. That's where a good GM comes in. If they figure out the players in their farm system that aren't going to work out, and they trade them. That's a very difficult job to have. That's why these guys get paid the big bucks. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do, because I agree, Stroman is probably going to be on the block, because I find it very hard to believe the Cubs are going to be going anywhere. And Stroman has value. He's young enough, and he's still pitching well, we've seen. So I find it very hard to believe that we're going to be at the trade deadline and he's not going to be pitching well. I think he's still going to be, being Marcus Stroman, doing well. So yeah, that's one option for them, but they're going to have to give for that. The Cubs are a team looking for young guys too. And I don't know what they're going to do. It's going to be a big moment for them, because if you give too much, then you find yourself with a Marcus Stroman who isn't old yet, but also isn't young. And this is a team where you want young guys. So you find yourself giving up a prospect that's, say, 21 years old, and then ends up having a solid career, and you're stuck with 32-year-old Marcus Stroman, who's only got a couple years left. It's kind of rough. So it's a decision you got to make, but it's also, you got to be very, very careful with what you give up.
Yeah, there's different directions to go. You're right. Like McCarthy in the outfield, we've seen him be a little good at times. He's a very streaky kind of guy, especially, anyone around that 200 mark is probably a little streaky. But you got to imagine one of these rookies, maybe even a couple, will not be on the team by the end of this year, just because of trades or something of that sort. It's because, older teams out there right now are probably looking at the Diamondbacks and really thinking like, oh, well, this says these guys have some young guys on their team and we can see their potential. Maybe we go out and get them. That's just my point of view of the situation. We could see an entirely different thing. And you're right. You can't give too much away, because we just talked about it. The star power. It's great that they don't have star power and they're succeeding. But if you lose too much of the little guys on someone that you think will be a big star, or even someone that you think will just be like another guy in the rotation, then you're falling off. And, just like that, you're out of a wild card spot because you gave away, 3 good outfielders for 1 pitcher.
You got to think about your future too. Realistically, as a GM, you got to realize this isn't your year yet. It's just not. So you got to realize this is a team built for the future. It's full of young guys. You got to think long term. You can't only be thinking of, what's right after this deadline immediately. How are we going to play immediately? Sure, that's in your head, of course, but you got to think long term. You can't be a reactionary GM. You can't be saying, I want to, be in the headlines. I want everybody to say, I built this team for success. No, it's a slow process. Sometimes, like, we're seeing a big jump here from them being terrible to contenders now, but baseball will humble you. Eventually they're going to fall down. Eventually they're going to have to fight, to contend. And so the GM's got to realize that. And they've done a good job so far. So I have some faith, but you always get afraid especially at a trade deadline. It becomes a very jumpy time. Fans want things to get done. There's pressure on you. And sometimes guys, GMs make mistakes. And this team isn't a team I think that they can't really afford a mistake, because they don't spend much. So they can't really fix an issue with spending very much. They have a cap that they really spend at, and they rarely, you really never see them give out like huge contracts. They're just not one of those teams. They're not in a huge market. So they really rely on the homegrown talent. And I think that's going to be in their heads. I think that's really going to be, I don't think you're going to see a very active deadline for them. I think you're going to see small moves, but sometimes small moves could end up being big moves if they make a smart one. So it's going to be interesting to see. I can't see them being one of those teams that's making like 3 deals and everybody's shocked and wow, they're getting, so-and-so, because they can't retain huge talent. And also they don't want to give up young talent. So I think that combination is going to really kind of hinder them this year, but could actually in the long run help them by keeping the young guys. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see for sure.
Yeah, I'm absolutely excited. And I mean, we are a baseball focused show, but Giannis on the Bucks, the Milwaukee Bucks for basketball, said they like lost in like the first round this year, and some guy asked him if he thinks that this year's a failure, and he said no. This is like, just because we didn't win doesn't mean that it's a failure. Like, we played some insane years, played some insane games. That doesn't mean that it's a failure. It's a successful season still. So that, if I'm the Diamondbacks GM right now, that is exactly how I'm looking at it. This is if we can, show all of baseball, hey, we are here. We're not here yet, but you could see that we are building up. We have pitching. We are going to get some more. We have hitting. We'll try to get maybe one big piece, potentially. Successful season, in my opinion.
I look at it, I understand what Giannis was saying, but I look at it is, if your team going through stepping stones. So like, if your team, obviously the goal is to win a championship, and if you don't win a championship, you fail. But if you're on if like the Diamondbacks, they're on a journey right now. They're starting from the depths and they're coming up. So if they retain their talent, they play well enough, it's not a failure, because you're making steps to a World Series. Now, if that never ends up leading to a World Series for whatever reason, for injury, for a mistake, for a trade, whatever, just underperformance, then I look at that as a failure, because at the end of the day, you're winning a World Series. We're not here to, it's great for these guys to have fun, but they're not here just to have fun. It's not Little League. You got to win a World Series. They get paid for a reason. So if at 20 years from now we look back at the Diamondbacks and we say, well, yeah, they went to the Division Series, Championship Series, never really worked out, then it is a failure to me. I look at it like that, because it's got to be stepping stones to a World Series. You look back at other World Series teams, sometimes years like just preceding their winning, they went to the playoffs, they got a little farther. Those seasons weren't failures, because it led to the winning year. So it's all about the end result. And history will, history doesn't lie. History will show it. And so, to me, a failure is only if the end result, the players leave, and it's a totally different team, and they don't win. That's the failure. That's how I look at it.
All right, yeah, that's a good point of view. I liked Giannis's quote, but I think like in his position, like they're like, I don't know, they were like the Astros of baseball. So like, I mean, when I saw the quote, I was kind of like, well, it is kind of a failing season. Then, like, you guys just lost in the first round. That would be like if the Astros lost to the Mariners in the first round. Like, it's just, but you're right. There are stepping stones. Like, if the Diamondbacks right now, they probably want to win a World Series, but they're not looking to win one this year. They are just looking to develop right now. If they make it to the playoffs, that's great. If they come close, that's still fine. If they don't make it, they probably just want to see, their talent go big. But yeah, Anthony, we are coming to the end of our show, our first ever Sunday special. We won't always be talking about teams. There might be different topics that we talk about, but the Diamondbacks were a big team, and I thought it would be pretty cool to talk and go a little bit more in depth on, how they're doing and what's going on with this team right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, usually they're a team that, like, look, we're a New Jersey-based show, so we kind of try to focus on like the tri-state area, or at least like the general area that's relevant to us. But it's fun to talk about a team that we really don't go in depth on too often, and it's a team that's exciting. Like, I always love young talent teams. I love talking about teams that aren't necessarily there yet, because there's a lot to talk about. There's how could they improve? How far should they go? Should they sell their young talent? Like, it's a lot of stuff to talk about. It's a lot of fun. So I mean, yeah, I enjoyed it. I liked having like kind of just time to focus on the one topic for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Anthony, any final thoughts before we end our show today?
I mean, best of luck to Diamondbacks. I know what it's like to, be failing for a number of years as a Mets fan. So I always root for the underdog teams, and as long as they don't interfere with the Mets, go as far as you want.
I like it. And for me, another great show for us. Hoping for a great season by the Diamondbacks. You always love to see it. Join us again on we have shows on Tuesday and Sunday, but they get released Monday and Wednesday. So come back on Wednesday when you can see our next episode of The Walk Off. And for Vincent Discuss and Anthony Walsh signing off, we will see you guys on Wednesday. Remember, don't forget, Diamondbacks, go D-backs, go Corbin Carroll, and I've said Zach Allen is going to win Cy Young.